Today I will be your mysterious wizard guide through the world of setting up for black box logging. It's a mystery. It's a nightmare. And today we're gonna actually do it. Yeah. Hey everybody, I'm Bacon Ninja, and yeah, today we're going to jump off into black box logs, but we're not going to jump off into how to read them. Instead, I'm going to show you how to set your quad up to get them, things you need to consider for various types of quads, and how to set up your black box log viewer to at least minimally get some data out of it if you really want to dive off into digging and understanding these things. And what is the point of getting logs if I'm not going to show you how to read them in detail? Well, the point is sometimes when people ask for help, it's really helpful to give someone one of your black box logs because they can see exactly what your quad was doing even when you can't necessarily explain to them what it was. They can look at the logs and maybe they can determine some things. They can see how well your quad handles resonance and how much of that's getting back to the gyro. They can see how well it's tracking your sticks. They can see if your pin control is freaking out and your motors are just hitting caps. So even though you may not be able to use the black box logs, it does come in handy a lot. If you're dealing with a vendor on a problem with your quad, they may want to see a black box log. If you're helping a buddy out or having a buddy help you out, black box logs may need to be involved. It's a really critical part of what we do, and most quads can do it. But today I'm going to show you the various ways that our quads take black box logs, because it can be a little bit different depending on what kind of quad, what kind of flight controller you have, how to set them up, and then how to set up the black box log viewer to get some basic charts in there with some really good presets from UAV Tech so that you can take a look at some minimal things. And then I'm going to show you things like how to clear out the black box logs when you're done, and a couple of things about how to look at your frame resonance, because I think that's something most people can really dive into and understand, and it can be really helpful in the long run. So the first thing we're going to want to do is understand the various kinds of black box logging. And to do that, I need to explain a couple of things about flight controllers to you. Not every flight controller is made equal. There are bajillion-D kinds of flight controllers, and that's a legitimate number, bajillion-D. If you didn't know, if you look it up in the dictionary under Bacon Ninja's randomly made up words, it is in there. It's not a dictionary you probably have, but bajillion-D is definitely a word that would appear in that book if it existed. And I promise it does, somewhere on the internet, but not physically because it's not real. Anyway, bajillion-D, yes, that's how many flight controllers there are. And all of them handle black box logs differently. Some flight controllers, like this SpeedyBee F723, have a gigantic black box chip that can hold 256 meg. Actually, I think it's much, much more than that. Now that I think about it, it's several gigs worth of black box data on this chip. Don't quote me on the size of it. It's kind of impressive how large it is. That's what she said. Anyway, so yeah, there's that kind that has gigantic onboard chip. Then we are off to more standard things like on this Skystars F7 HD stack that has an 8 megabyte black box chip, which means that you can get a few flights in, but you're not going to get all day or all week's worth of flying in like you could on the first thing I showed you because it has so much room. And we'll get into how the room is consumed here in a minute. And then the third type is like this SpeedyBee F4V3, F405 V3 that actually has an SD card slot. And there's a lot of considerations for the SD cards. So let me just break down the differences in all of this for you. The ones that have the 8 meg flash chip, like I said, you get a few flights. It's not too big a deal. You basically have to take all the files out. I'll show you in a little bit to get any of the logs. It's not too big a deal. It's handled pretty well by BetaFlight. The ones that have the gigantic chip and the ones that have the SD card are actually very, very similar. And I'm going to show you a process today of how to clear those out because it's kind of unique. But first, let's get a quad connected to BetaFlight so I can show you what the various storage types look like and how you can actually get your logging enabled. And with our first quad connected, we're going to head straight to the black box tab. You can see that I have 326 megs free and 155 consumed. And that's because this is a SpeedyBee F7V3, and I was actually right the first time when I said 256 megs. Nope, I was wrong still. It's like 512 megs. It's some weird, obscure number, but it holds a lot of flights. That 155 megs that I've used is probably like 4 weeks, about a month's worth of flights for me. So that's a whole lot of flights, and as you can see, I haven't actually cleared the thing out. It's still all in there. And we'll look at the other options and how they work, but you'll just want to remember that this method with the extremely large flash chip that's over 8 megabytes and the SD card method are very similar in the way they're presented in this screen, and they're very similar in the same way that we clean them off, which I'll show you here in a second. But let's go ahead and get the black box logging set up, and then I'll clear this off, and you can kind of see how that works. And for this kind of board, it emulates an SD card. Even though it's not technically an SD card, they work exactly the same. So the logging device sets itself to SD card. This next one is very important. This is the black box logging rate. And you'll notice that it's done in increments of what my PID loop frequency is, which is 3200 hertz. So this 1/1 would be 3200 hertz. And you'll notice I have mine set to 1/2 or 1600 hertz. And that means essentially I'm logging at half the rate of my PID loop with my black box. And the reason that's important is that although we can go slower than half, or we could go all the way up to the full speed of the PID loop, I chose half because that gives me enough data to get good charts and graphs, enough data points. Every other data point essentially is what I'm going to be writing without having a gigantic amount of space needed, as if I were doing every single data point the PID controller is looking at. That would be double the space. Essentially, I'm saving half the space by going to 1/2 logging rate. Now, if I turn that down even further to something like 1/4, I could save even more space. But I don't have enough data points to give me really good, smooth chart data. And so basically, all the things that I'm going to be doing with that graph are kind of void. You really don't want to go under 1/2 of your loop speed with your logging, no matter what kind of storage device you're actually using. In this case, I do have a lot of room, but if this was an 8 meg flash chip, I would eat that up in maybe 2 or 3 flights. 2 or 3 3-minute flights would eat the whole 8 meg chip. So you got to kind of be careful with it, but 1/2 is a really good place to be for this. And then under the black box debug mode, we want to make sure we have gyro scaled here. And that's kind of weird, but just trust me. And then we want to hit save and reboot to set those settings. And what gyro scale does is actually write the raw gyro data. That means pre-filtered. So the raw gyro data your gyro is seeing is what will be in the gyro graphs. Now, it will also have graphs for filtered gyro data. And why this is important is so you can see what the gyro is actually seeing before all those BetaFlight filters actually take place, and not see what the PID controller is seeing, but see the raw data itself. So you can see the things like your frame resonance without it being filtered out, and you have no idea. And you can compare your filtered settings versus your unfiltered gyro data and make sure that you're filtering appropriately. So it's really important that we have gyro scaled to get the correct kind of data that we want to look for here. And as far as clearing this black box out, you'll notice there's no button to actually do it. There's no like erase flash button. What you have to do is activate mass storage mode, and then we're going to get a folder pop up. And once that folder pops up, we're going to see a couple things, this freespace.e and the logs file. And what's inside logs is what we'd expect. These are all of my black box logs that I have done so far. So this is every time I've armed the quad, it makes a black box log. Every time you arm the quad, the black box logs start. So this is every time I've armed the quad, and it created a log all in one list. And if I wanted to grab these would be the things that I want to either give to somebody or take into my own black box explorer to look at. So when you get ready to copy things off, this is how you get to them and copy your black box logs off. But what I want to do right now is show you how to clear it before we move ahead, just so you have a totally fresh start with your logging. In case for some reason black box logging was enabled before and you've changed the settings now to the proper ones, you want to kind of clear out all this old junk data so that it doesn't make a mess whenever you actually want to use the logs, because nobody likes unusable junk data mixed in with their usable happy data. So I'm going to select all these and then delete them. So we're going to just select all of them and hit delete, and it is going to take a minute. There we go. And then actually one thing you have to do with an SD card one is delete this freespace.e folder. And it's going to complain at you for a second when you delete it. It's going to say, are you sure you want to permanently delete this? And you say yes. And then you say yes again, and you're good to go. Now you can close the folder and eject the disk, which should say BetaFlight. Now you'll want to unplug the USB from your quad and then plug it back in, and you'll notice there's no more used space on your black box chip. That's because you just cleared it. Now, if you didn't delete the freespace.e file, then it won't show free space. It'll show the same amount of used space that it had, even though there won't be any logs there, and you'll be very confused. Because with SD card method black box recorders and extra large chips that emulate SD cards, like what's on my F7 V3, you have to delete the freespace.e. What that thing's actually doing is keeping track of how much used space there is, because the flight controller really doesn't know it all. So that file is actually doing that for it. And we have to delete that, and every time it is deleted and then subsequently BetaFlight's booted back up again, it'll make a new one that's completely blank and fresh, and we'll be able to use the space again. So that's something you're going to want to do. Now, if you have a quad with an 8 meg chip, it's a little bit different because you don't have a freespace.e file and you don't have some of the other things that we just showed on the SD card method or the extra large chip method. So let me grab a quad with an 8 meg chip so you can kind of see the difference. And now taking a look on a Skystars board with a 16 meg chip, actually, you'll notice we have some different buttons here. But you will notice that now it says onboard flash because it's no longer emulating an SD card, and I still have the 1/2 rate with gyro scaled. But now I have buttons like erase flash and activate mass storage device mode. And that's because with these built-in flash chips, which is different than the large 512 megabyte flash chips like what's on the F7V3, you can actually erase it here and open it as an SD card, just like we did with the SD card method, which is odd, but I'll show you that. So when you want to erase files on this, you don't have to go in it and then delete them. You can actually just hit the erase flash button and it'll erase everything. Just make sure to get your logs out first because it will remove them. Absolutely. So let me show you the difference in the mass storage mode for this one. And with mass storage mode activated again, you'll notice I don't have any folders for this. I have a BTFL all and a BTFL 001, and that's all of my logs. And what's actually happening here is this all file represents every subsequent numbered file all in one. Because the flash-based stuff is a little bit different. You saw I had a ton of numbered files in the SD card variants, but this one has a BTFL underscore all and the numbers. So if I want to pick one single solitary flight, I can just pick a numbered one. But if I want to look at the entire day's flights, everything on the chip as one file, I can hit the all, and then I'll show you in Black Box Viewer how you can kind of select that. I take them all, it's a play on the words, all the time, and just keep them, and if I want to open up an individual, I will. But if you're sending this to somebody else, you're going to want to make sure that you send the all and all of the subsequent logs, and not just the one like you would if you were doing an SD card. So I'm going to get these copied off, and then I'll show you how to erase them. And with my logs copied off now, I'm going to close the folder, and then I'm going to eject BetaFlight again to make sure I cleanly do this. And then I'm going to unplug my USB and plug my USB back in, and we should see BetaFlight pop up again with the option for black box. And in here, you'll notice even though I copied them, it still says it's entirely used. But if I hit erase flash and then yes, erase data flash, it will take a few minutes and then my data flash will be empty. Now, some other considerations. If you have a true to life SD card, you can't just pop any old SD card in there and get it to work. The SD card slot will see a maximum of 4 gigs of SD, no matter what kind of card you put in there. But the recommendation is that you put a card no bigger than 32 gigs, and it has to have one of these ratings. That means it's either high capacity or standard capacity. If it has anything else like a U3 rating or an XD rating, it's all kind of weird. That means it's an extended, and it's not going to work with the way BetaFlight can read SD cards. So now that you have the black box set up on your quad, and you have a fresh, clean chip, whether it's a 16 meg or 8 meg flash or an SD card or one of the giant weird ones that like SpeedyBee puts on them and it pretends to be an SD card, it all works the same. You know how to get the files off, you know how to clear it, and you've got all the logging set up. It's time to go fly the quad. Just go fly the quad. And then send the logs to whoever wants to read them. But let's just say you want to read them. Let's just say you want to dive off into this wonderful world of black box confusion. And yeah, I'm going to show you now how to set up Black Box Explorer. But that starts with actually downloading Black Box Explorer, which can be done from this GitHub page, which I have linked in the description below. And the most recent version is from June 13th of 2022. But don't let that confuse you. It works just fine with all the recent versions of BetaFlight. It just doesn't show some of the newer things. I'll show you some spots in there where you can look, but the information's a little bit older because this is an older version of BetaFlight. It was designed for, I believe, 4.3's implementation. The version for 4.4 hasn't really come out yet. So it will still work, but some of the 4.4 features won't show up in there. It's really not that big a deal. I'm just going to show you the main categorization overview of things in there so you know what it looks like, even though we're not going to jump off into a deep dive. But it all starts by downloading this. So on this releases page, you're going to want to scroll yourself down to the assets and pick the one for you. It looks like they do have some for Mac. They also have portable.zips if you don't want to install it, or installers for Windows. And now that you've got that downloaded and installed, don't run it. Don't run it yet. There are still things to be done. And one of the things to be done is super important, because I'm not going to show you how to set up your own charts and graphs. That is a gigantic pain. And you can actually do that yourself if you want. I'll show you where it exists, and you can dive off into the wonderful world of confusion. However, UAV Tech has made it very easy for us. On his website, there are some presets. He has a whole thing of presets for different screen layouts for Black Box Viewer, and they're in what's called a JSON file. So we're going to go grab that JSON file first, and the first thing I'm going to show you how to do with Black Box Explorer is how to load this, and then I'm going to show you what you loaded. So if you're confused by this, don't worry, just do this, and then I'll explain to you why you've done this once we get it installed. So on UAV Tech's site, there is this page that we want to go to, again, linked in the description below, and over here we have some BBE files for the 3.4, 3.5 version. We're going to want to right-click this 3.5 version and save link as. And you're going to notice it saves as a JSON file. So just go ahead and save this. If you click this file, you're going to get gobbledygook and it's not going to work. So you want to make sure that you right-click and do a save link as. Because like I said, if you just click it, you're going to be viewing all the gobbledygook and it won't do you any good. We need the actual file, and the only way to do that is right-click and save as. And now that you've got that file, let me show you how to implement it in Black Box Explorer. And the first step will be to actually open Black Box Explorer, which looks like this. And you see here this button to open log file or video. But we're not going to open a log file. No, sirree. No, we're not. We're going to open that JSON file that we just downloaded. So I'm going to press this button and then go find that JSON file that I just downloaded from UAV Tech's website. So I press the button and it pops up, and I'm looking for the 3.5 version. It's going to say workspaces loaded because the workspaces are loaded. And with those loaded, you can now close Black Box Explorer, because I've sufficiently confused you as to why you just did that. Well, the reason why I did that is because those UAV Tech presets, like I said, set out the way that you actually view the file. It makes all the pre-done charts and graphs that's going to pull your black box data into them for you. And a lot of people use the ones by UAV Tech because they are terrific. He has taken a lot of time to pair a lot of different line items in charts that make sense. So a lot of people look at them that way, and it's going to make sense in the long run to you as well if you're digging into this. So we just want to use the same ones he's using. And now it's time to actually open a log file. So I'm going to go grab one from my SpeedyBee F7V3, which, if you'll remember, was one of the ones that had the weird SD card emulation with a gigantic chip of 512 megabytes. But I'm just going to grab one log file. I'm going to go to that folder, double click it, and it will open the Black Box Explorer. And now we can actually see what Black Box Explorer looks like. And if I scroll through here, yeah, there's pretty colored lines. Yee, woohoo! But we have stuff over here. This legend over here tells us what the lines mean. And to get different things in this legend, we pull the workspaces down. This is what we imported from UAV Tech. And the one we spend a lot of time on is debug plots. If we load that, you can see a whole bunch of data over here, like the set point, the gyros, the gyro scaled. If you remember, we set our controller to log gyro scaled specifically. And there's a whole bunch of data in here. You can do things like stick tracking and see how well your quad is following your stick inputs by looking at the roll and pitch and yaw axes versus your set point, which is actually what you're commanding the quad to do. You can go in and look at all your frame resonance with the gyro scale, which I'm going to show you really quickly in the analyzer. But I'm just going to take you through all the different parts and pieces of this. I am not going to show you how to dig into all the data, because that is, like I said, a whole gigantic topic in itself. And I hope people who have done it a lot have gone down below to the comments to leave everybody else some really good ideas about where to start looking for that. And don't worry, if you drop a link down there, I will look at it and approve the comment, assuming it is a valid one. Don't spam a bunch of random crap down there. If it's a valid link to a good video, I will make sure it gets approved. Don't worry if they get temporarily moderated. I'll go through all of them. But yeah, I hope that people have done that, because now people are going to get confused about all these colorful charts and lines and graphy things. But let me just run you through the basics of the layout of this so you kind of know where things are. And we've covered the legend. This is all the different things we're looking at. We know how to change what's in the legend by looking at different workspaces. Down here at the bottom is basically a timeline of the flight. You can zoom through it real quick. Then there's a couple of buttons over here. One is the log header, which gives you all of the information about how BetaFlight was configured during the flight. So maybe you forgot what your PID gains were, or maybe you forgot what your rates were for this flight. All that is trapped in your log data if you so need it. And if we click on something like this, let's look at the gyro scaled pitch. I'm going to click on that one colored line in the legend, and something's going to pop up. And that would be this analyzer view down here. You'll notice this chart pops up, and I can make it bigger. And this is the actual resonance graph of this quad on the pitch axis. And that tells me what my frame's doing. That tells me the raw gyro data of what is coming from my motors and my props and my frame into my gyro. So I can look at this and say, hey, I know I have a peak at 180 hertz. What's causing yay peak? Well, that seems to be motor noise because there's a little line there that says max motor noise. I know that exists, so I can see how noisy my quad is. And then I can take that same information and click one of these ones that's just a regular gyro instead of gyro scaled. And I can see the filtered data. So you can see my peak goes away, and I have a little bit of noise down here, which may or may not be concerning. And that's how we check for frame resonance. And again, you can dig into how that works. But this is called the analyzer window. It shows us a spectrograph of different things. And there's a couple of different views for this. What we have now is just frequency, but a lot of times we want to look at something called frequency versus throttle, which just presents this red line graph, which I think you've seen probably before. Let me change it to something a little noisier. You see this red line graph and these bands of things. This is a different way of looking at your resonance. And sometimes some people might ask you for a screenshot of this. So just know how to pull it up. This is called frequency versus throttle. The other one is called frequency. And normally we want to see these for gyro scaled on all three axes, roll, pitch, and yaw. So if somebody's asking you about your frame resonance, this is the thing you want to take a picture of and send to them if you don't want to send the entire log. So now you know how to pull it up. That exists in the debug plots workspace. And remember, gyro scaled is the raw data, gyro is the filtered data. So normally we want to see the raw data if we're helping you troubleshoot a problem. And then we may want to see the filtered data, make sure your filters are effective. That's a possibility as well. But this is called the analyzer display. Let's look at something else. And to get that out of the way, we click this button up here that says View Hide Analyzer Display. And then we're back to our main window. You can also view or hide this happy little quaddy thing here. It just moves with the log. So it does what the quad was doing. It tries to represent it. It's not super accurate to reality. So yeah, I leave it there for funsies, but it probably won't do you any good, and nobody's caring about what that's doing in the pictures. But they may want you to go find a spot where you did a roll or a flip and zoom in and take some screenshots for them. And to do that, we go back to the workspace, and you'll see there are other ones here, like stick tracking. Stick tracking is a great one. This gives us the stick tracking for the set point on pitch, as well as the gyro on pitch, and all of the terms on pitch. That's a nice one. But let's say we want to look at something that's just a roll. We want to find a time where we rolled. So we go into the workspace roll details, and we get all this stuff for roll. Now what we're looking at, see this lime green called set point roll. When we do a roll, we're going to see it go all the way to the top. You can see how mine went all the way to the top and kind of leveled out. That's because I'm in a roll right there. So this would be a good spot to send somebody a picture of what it looked like when I did a roll. And it has all the necessary things like the gyro and the P and the D and all the other gains that someone troubleshooting might want to see during your roll command. So what you would do here is find something like this where it has peaked all the way up on either the roll workspace or the pitch workspace or the yaw workspace. You find a spot where it has peaked totally, which meant you were in a maximum move for that kind of axis. And then we're going to zoom in on this so you can kind of get more detail. And to zoom, we just pull this slider up here and we can kind of elongate things, or we can make them shorter. If they want a whole bunch of rolls, see how we can squish them all into there. You kind of see all the places where I did rolls. And you can find them really easy. They're either all the way to the top or all the way to the bottom, depending on which direction I rolled. And if I go to this one, say I rolled this way, you can zoom in, and then someone could tell how responsive my quad is to rolls. And if my PID controller did anything funny in a roll. And that's pretty much it. That is the basics of what you can do with Black Box Explorer on a very surface level and where all the buttony things are. There's a lot more you can do with this, You can add a video to it so you can see what the quad is doing, but that gets more advanced. But hopefully this at least gives you a surface level understanding of how to get the tool on your machine, how to get the black box logs logged. I can't say logged twice. All kinds of logs all day long, all day log. Now you know how to open it. You know how to get your logs. You know how to clear it off and what your settings should be to get the appropriate logging. Remember, if you're using an SD card, a true SD card, you can only get 4 gigs of data on there, and you cannot use a card larger than 32 gigs. It must be formatted in FAT16 or FAT32, and it must be one of these 2 kinds of things again, because if it's too big, it won't work. It has to be kind of older technology. And if you're using one with an 8 or 16 meg flash chip, it's super easy. And if you're using one with the larger emulated SD card flash like the SpeedyBee F723, you're golden. Just don't forget to delete that freespace.e file, or it's not going to actually be free ever. And hopefully now you can pull your logs and you can send them to your buddies and they can help you read what's going on with your quad. I know in my Discord, a lot of times we will ask for a log, and a lot of times people don't know how to get it. And that's perfectly fine. They've never had any experience with this. But now at least you know how to go get them and send them, and you can start dabbling a little bit with the workspaces from UAV Tech and kind of get an idea what some of this means. It might be gobbledygook and not make sense to you at all, but if you take some time to look at the charts and then watch some great videos, which I hope people leave in the comments below about how to actually read these things and get some sensible data out of them, then you'll eventually learn what it all means, and you won't need that buddy anymore. You'll be completely self-sufficient, except for it's still sometimes a good idea to bounce ideas off of other pilots, because we all see different things in these logs. They're just wiggly lines, and you can make a lot of nonsense out of wiggly lines. I've had a really long day. Anyway, that's all I have. I hope this helps you get some black box data. Even though you may not know what to do with it yet, you can at least send it to somebody and get some help, or take some screenshots of the appropriate places and get some help. I really hope it helps to get that help. And until next time, stay greasy, and I'll catch you later. So I wonder what the possibility is that people are more confused by being able to get into black box logs and not read them. I really hope it helps, though. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Maybe I just confused the crap out of you. I really hope that's not the case. But what I did want to tell you is my children put Play-Doh in my Pez dispenser. What? Why do children do these things? Play-Doh in my Pez dispenser. How does that represent a Pez candy? If I popped that directly into my mouth without looking, I would probably vomit. Come on, children. I love them. I love them, though, those little suckers. And I really hope I didn't confuse you with the black box logs. If I did, leave me a comment below and you can harass me as much as you want. Just go ahead and do it. I'm all for it.